Hello, everyone. We're joined here with Jacob Crawford from Crawford Filmworks. Uh, Jacob's one of those guys where in high school, he was always around with a drone and a camera, and no one really knew what the hell's going on. What was it? 8 years later, it's all paying off. Um, I'll let him start off with saying what his company does, when they started, and what they do. Go ahead, Jacob.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. My first podcast, so we'll see how it goes. But
Exclusive.
yeah, exclusive. But anyways, yeah. So our company focuses on the development and producing of stories through film and television in the motion picture industry. So my main role is executive producing, bringing stories to the screen.
And jumping back to the high school part, I remember seeing on Instagram like years ago, like 8 years ago, how you were I think one of the first people from what I remember in Anmore doing drone shots of all the luxury real estate, and you'd sell it back to real estate agents. How'd you jump from that to what you do now with these big companies and everything?
Yeah, I know it's been a bit of a wild journey from where it started, which was with a drone at the time, and no one really knew what a drone was. And I remember it was shortly after I think I graduated just out of high school. I was playing hockey, and the team was eliminated from playoffs fairly early. And I was sitting at home, and my dad was like, "All right, he's not really doing anything with his life, you know. I'm kind of working at a golf course." And
Oh,
anyways,
that's right. You
I
worked
was
at the Westwood, right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I
I was
remember
working
that.
at
Yeah.
Westwood Plateau Golf and Country Club, and you know, getting paid minimum wage, and was trying to save as much as I could. And next thing I know, I came across this drone, and I was like, "This thing is the coolest thing I've ever seen on YouTube." And I never heard of it before. And next thing I go to my dad, and I'm like, "I want to buy this drone." He's like, "Really? That that's what you're gonna spend your money on?"
What year is this?
This is I think 2015. Yeah, it's 2015, and I remember this is probably the best piece of advice I think I'd ever got. And my dad goes, "Well, if you want to buy the drone, find a way to make the drone pay for itself." And I remember going, "Ah, screw it, I'm just buying it anyways." So I bought this thing, and next thing I know, I'm playing with this drone, and I started getting some traction through real estate guys up in Ammore, and they're like, "Hey, could you take a photo of this big house for me?" And
Mhm.
at the time, no one had really seen that perspective. So it was kind of at the forefront of the industry, and the drone technology from when I started to where it is now is completely in a different planet. When I started, you know, you could barely see what you were recording.
Mhm.
The thing would fly away randomly. You couldn't trust it at all. You're flying like a cheap GoPro on the front to now where they return home to you where you take off from and all this crazy. They shoot like 8K and stuff. So, anyways, got this drone, started doing real estate stuff, and then that evolved into a love for filmmaking and cameras, and made this like movie in Hawaii, or not movie, it was like a YouTube video of my family in Hawaii. And then that got like 40,000 views. And I'm like, what the heck? Someone's like watching my family go to Hawaii. And people actually like enjoyed it. And I was just running around with a GoPro. So that like moved into more travel stuff. And then I started working with music artists, traveling with them, doing a bunch of like tour videos. I was traveling kind of around the world, documenting the music scene and music artists on the road. And then, you know, I always love movies. And so I was trying to find a way, how do I like break into that bigger industry? How can I put stories on screen and in the cinema?
Mhm.
And so then kind of COVID happened, and it forced me to no longer be able to travel with music artists because that scene absolutely died. And so then next thing I know, I was like, all right, well, back to the drawing board here. Let's take what we have now and leverage that into trying to make bigger productions. So met Bailey, who's our head of production and produces pretty much everything that comes to our company. And he was like a really driving force behind growing the production company and helping align the vision of like, how do we take on this massive industry?
Mhm. I see. How long were you traveling for with and which artists did you travel with?
So I was traveling around for about 4.5 years, like
Damn.
every weekend
And just by
almost.
yourself, you weren't with the crew?
No, it's just me. So I was doing everything. I was shooting, flying the drone, editing, taking photos. And some artists had like photographers as well. But I got my first break with Bannock actually.
Uh-huh.
So I was playing hockey. It was my last year of junior hockey, your 20-year-old year. I'd been with this team for I think 3 or 4 years now, heading into playoffs, and I was kind of picking up that like video side of things. And that I was starting to develop that passion, and hockey was starting to take the back seat, which it had always been at the forefront. And I remember probably one of the hardest decisions at the time, and one that I'm so thankful for, was I got the opportunity to go traveling with Bannock and do this dream job that I had always kind of envisioned, hoping that I would get an opportunity to do. But then I was leaving behind hockey, which was like every day of my life for 20 years, and a team that I dedicated 4 years to are now heading to playoffs, and I was the starting goalie at the time. So I'm kind of like leaving behind my brothers to go take this opportunity, and I had no idea which one to take, because like, a chance to go film with a DJ who you kind of grew up listening to, or continue to fight with your brothers, in playoffs, you can see the pros to both sides. And so my mom was pro, do your new passion, which is go film.
Uh-huh.
My dad's like, look, there'll be other opportunities. You've dedicated 4 years. You got to finish this out with the team. Then I went and talked to my coach. My coach was like, you're absolutely nuts. Like,
Yeah, of course.
you're
he said
not
that.
leaving here. Like, you're finishing what you started, kind of thing. And I'm like, so now I'm leaning more that direction. And then I talked to my teammates, and my teammates were on my mom's side and basically said, like,
Like, dude, fuck
dude,
it,
take
just
that
go.
opportunity, go. Like, you might not get that again.
Yeah.
True friends.
Yeah, seriously, man. And
They wanted you out of that team.
yeah, I know. I'm like, now
This guy's trash.
yeah, now looking
Maybe we'll
at
actually win a game.
it, yeah, they're like, wow, I see the other side now. They're like, get him out of here, ship him off. He's not passionate anymore. He sucks. But anyways, so they were super supportive, and I mean, I ended up making the decision on taking the tour with Bannock, and toured Western Canada with him, and that kind of started it all.
That's sweet.
What
That
did
must've
you
been
do?
insane
So you
4
did
years.
live shows, and you shot like photos, videos, and everything.
Yeah, so I did like the first one. They had a photographer, and I was just there doing like a recap video of the tour.
Oh.
So just like documenting the entire process from behind the scenes to the shows to hungover breakfast to flying in through the airports, all that sort of stuff. Just kind of bringing that realism of the artist to their fan base.
So kind of like for example, Kanye West documentary. Like he just has a guy follow him the whole time, documenting everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
shoot, edit, and everything yourself?
All of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to dive a little deeper. So in terms of decisions that you had to make, so
Mhm.
you had hockey, and
Yeah.
how old were you at the time?
So I would have been like just turned 20 or turning 20. I think I
Okay,
was
so you
turning
graduated
20.
high school.
Yeah.
And you're playing hockey for which?
Abbotsford Pilots.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like junior B. So like,
Okay.
you're not going to the show, but it's still like fun and competitive.
Yeah.
Was post-secondary a thing that you had thought about at all?
It was, but when I was in high school, I honestly thought I was going to go to the show, which, and I was a terrible student.
Yeah.
And I was like, hockey is what I love to do. So let's try and push and make a career out of that. And, my dad's been a huge supporter in just like working with like your mental strength and mental toughness. And, if you truly believe in yourself and in what you want to do, like you're going to make it happen. So that was kind of always like, okay, I believe in myself to do this hockey thing. I'm going to go for it.
So the NHL was what you had in sight.
Yeah, that was like the goal. That was the goal. And post-secondary was never really kind of there until the hockey thing didn't work out. And I tried BCIT for like a week and
Okay.
just didn't work. It just wasn't my thing. I was never a school guy, like I was always the one walking through the hallways, like, causing issues
Yeah,
because I
causing
just
Bored.
didn't learn well. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't a very strong like reader, writer. So I wouldn't learn from like reading and writing. I was way more visual. So it's like
Okay.
when I watch something, I could really like ingest that. But
And the dad's advice for like, if you believe in yourself, that translates directly into business too. So
Yeah.
everything you learn, not everything you learn from hockey, obviously, but a lot of the things there like translates directly into growing your business and pushing to meet the people that you wanted to meet.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think what he's taught me through that. It worked in hockey really well. Being a goalie, I mean, like you're kind of by yourself, and most of the times you're a freak. So I think I also
He was a goalie too.
yeah. Okay, there we go. See,
Did not wash his gloves whatsoever, man.
yeah, those things.
Ugh.
Mine stink too.
You shower for the next 3 days, your hands just smell.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I mean, everyone thought goalies were weird. So I don't know. I
A little
guess
superstitious usually.
superstitious, yeah. And like, so obviously like your mental toughness is a huge part of it. And so I really like tried to practice that when I was younger. And I think that's definitely like helped transition into the industry we're in now, because it is a pretty daunting, difficult industry.
Yeah.
So how nervous were you to take that leap of faith? So I mean, you took it, but now that you actually accept the fact that you're going, how nervous were you to actually go on set? And like, were you excited? Were you nervous about like doing well? Because again, the guy is live. You only have one shot to do it.
Yeah,
So if you
no,
mess up, the video that day's gone.
yeah, it's yeah, it was weird. It was something that like you learn how to shoot with the camera and you kind of just understand it. But even still to this day, when I get asked to go do like a concert, footage thing, or go film some artist, there's always that like you got to nail these moments.
Right.
And as I got better at it, did more of it, you kind of can feel the rhythm of the set, and you got to really pay attention to it. But early on, like I was just like pointing and like hoping I was getting something cool, kind of thing. And you really like slowly start to figure it out. But it was definitely nerve wracking. Like I'm going to, I think the first show was Kelowna, with this guy who's I think at the time he was like 30. I'm 20. Don't know him at all, other than like his music. Have no idea what he's gonna be like. And so you kind of just have to develop a bit of a
Pick it up
friendship
as
and
it comes.
relationship and pick it up as it comes and start to kind of adapt. And I remember, I think like the first video I delivered to them, there was like a ton of revisions. I was terrified. I was like, did I just royally
And
screw this
how
up?
are you
I'm like,
pricing? Because at this point, you haven't really worked that many professional
yeah, my
gigs.
pricing was like,
It was probably dirt cheap.
I think it was like
wasn't
the most though I'd ever gotten paid for like
But
film.
were you
Like I think,
you're always underbidding what other competitors would be pricing at, probably.
yeah, probably. And I think their biggest thing is they wanted to go with someone that was local, like Vanix from Vancouver, and he had always worked with these guys from the States.
Uh-huh.
So when like I kind of came around, I was from Vancouver, and they were like, "Oh, this is great, local guy. We don't have to climb up, so we can save money there." And then I think like I got paid like $700 for 2 weeks or something. Like it was like nothing.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like making $300 flying a drone, so it was like, oh, $700, and I get to go travel and like
Jump on it.
drink beer and eat for free and like
Beer's pretty cool,
see
man.
Edmonton. I don't even think I'd been to Edmonton before, so
Yeah.
I was like, this is great.
Right.
Getting paid to travel Canada.
It's crazy when you look back on how those little things just meant so much
and they
at the
add up.
moment. They add up.
Yeah, totally.
At the
Yeah.
time, you probably don't really know what's going on. You probably can't look forward more than a month. 'Cause
Oh
you
yeah,
have to put
no,
so long.
I still didn't even know how things were gonna go once I got back, and if my team that I left was still gonna be playing or not.
Yeah.
So
At what point did you accept that, okay, the jobs are going to keep coming and I've accepted this as a career? 'Cause I remember even for my business, the first one I got while it was winding out, I was like, holy shit, like, what if this was the only project I'll ever get?
Yeah.
Right? I think you still have that fear.
No, I don't. You know what? As of like a few months ago, I realized I can. I'm gonna knock on wood first. I can go a lot from references, repeat clients, right? Like the Rolodex, like you were saying. I was at the point where I can kind of step back and now focus on either making things perfect or doing something else at the same time.
yeah, no, I mean, I think that to get to the point where you're now comfortable in your career, where you don't necessarily know where the next project's going to come from, is very lucky. And I think it's still something we fight for. We went through our slowest period. Was Q1, Q2 this year. Never been that slow in the last 6 years. And it was like, what's going wrong? Like, we just came off our biggest year yet. And I had that. I was like, oh my God, where's the next project going to come from? Like, we have payroll to make. We have office to pay. We have all these other expenses now. I think when I was starting out, what was nice is it was just you. It was literally just
Yeah.
me. And I
Right.
knew that,
No other
I knew I
overhead
could
responsibilities.
go film something. Like
Yeah,
I was like,
no
I'm sure
pressure.
I could go, shoot Celebrities Nightclub for
Yeah.
$200 or something, So I felt like there was always an easy way to just go find a
Work.
client. And I think with filming in general, it's been kind of booming over the last 10 years. And, content, social content's growing so rapidly fast that when I was kind of starting out, people needed content. And so I did a ton of real estate. I shot real estate and weddings, and I'll never shoot another wedding, and I'll never shoot another real estate gig, because it's just like soul sucking.
Uh-huh.
And so I, when I didn't really have a ton of work, was doing a little bit of travel, touring here and there, like very sparse, like 2 or 3 times a year. I was shooting weddings, And so I'd shoot. I think I shot like 24 weddings in 1 year,
Wow.
and that paid really well. Like I was getting paid, I think, like $350, like for a couple hours versus $750 for like 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I was like, this is great. So I did a ton of weddings. Shot for like a local company here, but they just like were terrible. I'll never go back.
Yeah.
It's
I
just a
bet.
lot. It's a lot.
Every industry has those either projects, or I guess that's a project as well, where they're soul sucking and you're just like second guessing what you're even doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like there's tons. I got friends that shoot weddings and love it, and power to them because that's like what they're passionate about. They love capturing that moment. But for me, it was like I loved being on the road, traveling, documenting that style. So like shooting a wedding just wasn't my cup of tea.
Uh-huh.
Shooting like the interior of a home with like no one in it just was like not where I wanted to be. But it was what could pay the bills to keep you focused on where you want to go.
Mhm.
I think it's amazing to make sure that you don't lose track of your vision.
Yeah.
So for the last, so you did the traveling for a while, and then for the last 2.5 years, you said you've had the production company, and now what's that entail? And
How did it start?
how did, well,
How
he
did
said
the
he,
production company? How did you transition
you,
from music?
you met
to,
your buddy, right? The one that,
Yeah, so I mean, like, I was still touring, doing a lot of that stuff. Like before COVID, I was actually in New York when the whole thing happened, touring with a different artist. So it was kind of like after Vanek, I got a bit more traction and started touring with a bunch of bigger artists, and they were paying me more. You're making like sustainable living, and I was like putting some money aside and loving life, traveling all over the world. It was great, and I was kind of putting and bankrolling some cash, and then I'd always wanted to get into the bigger realm. And I quickly realized after, a few years of touring that I don't want to be the guy that's, 33,
burnt out.
still on the tour bus, sleeping in a bunk that's like a coffin. I'm just like, it was incredible. Absolutely love it. Still will go out with like a very specific artist just because, we've got a great relationship. But, I won't take really any new touring gigs anymore because it does burn you out. And I was like, how do I make this more sustainable? How do I, have a family? How do I provide for my kids down the line? How do I grow something bigger that I can leave like a legacy of that's more than just you? So that was
Definitely.
really when the mindset started to like shift over.
We have to get things automated.
Yeah. It was
Otherwise
just
have
like,
that, yeah.
I'm doing everything myself and it's exhausting and I'm traveling. And I'm like, there's got to be a way to kind of grow this into something that's much larger that can provide for others. I think that's a huge thing at our company is the fact that we're able to like provide a living for people.
Mhm.
It's something that like we're super passionate about.
It's a
I
cool
think that
feeling.
even like it's crazy to think how many people like we hire and how many people you're actually providing income to. Not only you're providing a service, but you're helping the economy go through. And when you think about it, you're
putting
young,
food on the
putting
table.
food on the table for so many different people and families. And you think about, okay, well, I'm only, 26 years old, 25, whatever it is, and I'm supplying this economy chain. And it's to take a second and just reflect on it is baffling to me.
Yeah, no, it's mind blowing and it's like really humbling too
Yeah.
to think that like people actually believe in you and
Yeah.
trust you to
Give you
you know,
money.
pay them
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
And
give
a
them
lot of money
opportunity.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's that was something that was really cool once we started to develop the company further, and we were doing smaller projects. So when I made the transition, it was going from doing everything myself to then like small music videos where we'd have like a crew of 10 people. So I would direct the music video. We'd have a director of photography who'd operate the camera, and we have like some grips and gaffer and lighting guys and set deck art people. But it'd be like small. It'd be like 10-person crew, and then I'd edit. So I was still doing kind of the creative side of it. And then I was like, well, what's the next step from there? Well, we scale into bigger projects, and then eventually it got so big that I couldn't do creative, produce, and edit. I also don't love editing, so I was like, we're gonna have to find someone else to do this. And
Do you find that as your company grew, so you obviously began delegating more, but as your company grows, you get to kind of go back to the roots of what you enjoy doing rather than having to obviously do everything, but you can focus
Mhm.
on the things that you're actually passionate about.
See, and you know
Tell a
what?
story about
This
that.
is one thing I talked about this in like a talk before, and I
Not
said
a podcast though.
not a podcast. No, it was an in-person talk, way more terrifying. And I had to, yeah, that was a whole other thing. But what I found fascinating with what you pointed out there, saying that like when you add more people, you get to focus on the stuff you enjoy more. And it's like I would say that it's almost like the opposite for us.
Really?
For my side, it's like the company, and I said to these other people that I was talking to. They were like, why wouldn't it be the other way around, like the way you pointed it out? And I said it will be, but we're not there yet as a company, because as your company starts to grow, you take on way more responsibility. You have more people to look after, and they're doing the stuff that maybe you don't like doing as much. But you're now doing a lot of stuff that you don't like as much either, which is making sure they're paid on time, making sure money's coming in, tracking down new
Different
clients,
stressors.
different sides of it. I got into it because I love creating, making film, and now I feel like I'm, a business operator and manager and CEO
It's
kind
like a
of thing.
GM basically.
Yeah,
You're- you're
exactly.
doing
And
that.
so I said to them, I was like, for right now, I have to step away from the creative stuff that I love, that I really want to do more of, to be able to grow the company to a point where now I can step back into it. So we're in this like weird phase where right now I need to focus on the business development, because we have this machine moving and this beast growing, that I can't necessarily focus on writing a script right now, or, building out a treatment for a new series. I need to focus on how do I make sure that these people are fed every 2 weeks,
It's crazy because it starts moving so quickly that
Yeah.
if you keep letting it just go, it's like 5 years later and you don't know what happened. You haven't had a
Yeah.
second to even reflect on, what could I have improved on? Where did I actually want this business to gear towards? So
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like right now I find I'm in this transition phase where I'm still doing what I love, which is, just having this team of people that are so passionate about trying to make the best stories possible. Yes, I'm not necessarily the one calling action and cut and directing the narrative vision. No, I'm not the one writing the scripts right now, but I know that once we get this thing up to capacity and where it needs to go, I'll be able to come back over to it. So I'm kind of in this transition phase.
So tell me some of the cool projects you had going on, or maybe projects that you want to do in the future. What's the goal?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our biggest goal right now is, we want to be a household name like Bronx Studios, Warner Brothers, Paramount, A24, Little Lamb, all these, studios that were started. Bronx Studios is a huge inspiration of ours. Started from Burnaby. They did The Joker, they did House of Gucci. They did some of the biggest movies in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And all started from Anmore, actually, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
way.
And so we want to be a household name that brings stories to the screen that people resonate with. So whenever someone goes and clicks on a movie and, Crawford shows up, they go, oh, this is a film I'm going to buy into. This is a
Mhm.
film that's going to resonate with me, that I'm going to really feel like I've been moved by the end of it.
So build a brand that people respect.
Yeah, exactly.
up
Like
to.
A24 is a newer production company out there, and it's probably the only production company that gets a standing ovation before the movie starts. You go to Sundance, you see an A24 movie, and everyone's on their feet before the movie starts.
Cool.
And it's like, that doesn't happen, So they've really built this culture. Now, the tough part is A24 also doesn't make a ton of money. So there's like this,
Oh shit.
there's this whole business side too that we have to navigate, that we're really learning a lot about. That's like opened our eyes, is you kind of have to also understand what you need to make to pay the bills, and does that align with your creative vision?
You
But
gotta
we've got
find
some
that sweet
projects.
spot.
Yeah, you have to find the sweet
Yeah.
spot, right? And we've got some projects on the horizon that we're really excited about and really passionate about, and then we also have to take on some other projects that maybe we're not the most passionate about creatively, but they keep the lights on.
Yeah.
So it's still that balance, where A24 I think has done a good job of being able to make everything they want to make, although not all their films turn a profit. So their model is a little different than someone like Braun, who Braun's managed to have huge success stories, still made very high quality movies, but they do a bit larger volume and take on some other aspects like documentaries and whatnot. And they've had some movies I'm sure they're not the most proud of, but they have more wins than losses, right?
Where do you see let's kind of just get ahead, like the switch from people going into the movies to people buying them from their TV, obviously Netflix,
Because you grew up with
YouTube,
the blockbuster
even YouTube as well.
realm.
Yeah, like I
Like,
grew
do
up
you-
in the movie, like Go Rent the Movie kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
still remember there was you were in Port Moody, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there was that one in the IGA that was
Uh-huh.
right on the corner. Now it's like an eye optometrist, but that was
There's
like
still one in
that was a
North
movie
Van.
store.
Really?
I don't know how it's still like
The movie
operating.
place?
Yeah,
Lonsdale
on Lonsdale.
yeah.
I don't know
There's a
how
lot of
they
old
keep.
people that live
But
in
there's
those
no
things.
one there. I've never seen anyone
I've never
go in
seen.
there.
Oh,
It's open. It's by the gym that I go to.
They must own the building or something because
Yeah.
Something, yeah.
yeah,
Never anyone there.
yeah.
But sorry, what your question was, like, what do you see as the future?
Yeah, well, because your clients are just so for people to clear up that don't know anything about the space. A client comes to you, says, "Hey, I want to film this movie, right? Let's say about a cat and a dog." And you say, "Okay, your budget is so and so," and then you have to make the movie work within the budget, or you budget it out yourself. You tell them it's going to cost you this much.
Yeah, I mean, so we do both. So one side of our company is called development. So we have a development team now. It's like script analyst, and we do packaging and budgeting of people's scripts. And so we're really looking for Canadian driven and written content that we can bring to screen because there's a huge push right now with Netflix and Amazon building offices in Toronto. They're looking for Canadian content. So we're looking for Canadian stories that we can develop, package, and try and distribute and move through the streaming services. So that is when a writer or director would come to us with a script. They'd say, "Hey, here's my project. I have no idea how to get this made. Can you guys support this and develop it?"
So, okay, so once you develop it, when it comes to marketing that project, pushing it, so you said they push it mostly through streaming.
Yeah, so
companies?
we would, so
And how do they
basically,
get paid? Like,
yeah, it's a sinking ship. No, development is a long process and expensive process. So we've, been fortunate to focus a lot of resources to development this year, hoping that something goes, because when it does go, it can be lucrative, but it does take a long time, especially being like a small fish in a big pond.
but
But
wait, but for development, don't you get paid after the movie's made, and it's up to the person that investing into it to market
yeah,
it
so
and make
like
their
so
money on it?
so development basically, so a project that we're developing right now is a TV series. The writer came to us with the project. We actually option the project, so we pay the writer to now own the IP of his project for a term. So we've got a 2-year option on his idea and his script, and now we're trying to push that out to the streamers. So now we'll spend our money on building pitch decks, visual treatments, all this sort of stuff that then we now take to a company like Lionsgate or Braun or Netflix or Amazon, and we try and pitch them on this idea and be like, "Hey, fund this for us, greenlight this project," and then if that happens, we get paid, the writer gets paid, and we make a show. So that's one side of the business that we're focusing on. The other side is production service work. So that's where someone has the capital raised already, has the project's greenlit, and they need a company to execute it. And so that's where like we get paid to make money more quickly. We have a higher return on that. And so those are the projects maybe we're less passionate about, but we know we can facilitate, create, and help push to a finish line.
Pay the
kind of
bills.
thing.
So
Yeah.
then, when you develop a movie that then you own some rights to, and the original, I guess, writer owns rights to as well.
Yeah.
So you put all that money out the door for like 2 years, and you might not get anything back.
Yeah, exactly. So
Jesus.
right, yeah. So
I thought 30, 60 days was
No.
bad. That's fucking terrible.
yeah, so right now, like to put it in perspective, we have a series that we're shooting a proof of concept for in a week and a half. That's the one we're shooting at Gallery.
Uh-huh.
And so right now we're funding the entire thing. So we've paid the option agreement. We are funding the proof of concept, which, is very expensive. It's a 6-figure proof of concept for 3 days that we're funding. And then our whole goal is that we can sell this IP and sell this project to a streamer service like Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu.
So you
Disney
really need to
Plus.
believe in what you're
Yeah, you
producing.
need to believe in
Yeah.
it. And,
Wow.
to put it in perspective, like we've had 20 projects, minimum 20 projects that we've developed partially, and then get to a point where we're like, okay, maybe this isn't what the industry wants right now. And the only reason why we believe that the industry wants this one is because it's trying to tap into the market that's stuck on short form content, which is that new generation.
So that must be so difficult because I'm assuming you get like horse blinders and you're so set to complete it.
You have to be set.
You have to be, but you have to be realistic too and say,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's hold on at some point. Maybe we gotta open this up and
When do you
Look
shoot it behind the
around us.
barn? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know exactly.
exactly.
And
It's
I
good
think
way.
that's the hardest part is, we've
Cut
had
your
a few
losses.
projects where we've like spun our wheels on and spent, $20K, 30 grand on that, we're taking out behind the barn and putting a cap in it because it's just not moving, or we bookshelve it. A lot of the projects that maybe aren't going right now might go in the future.
Uh-huh.
You looked at, there was the boom of comedy, in the early 2000s. Super Bad was coming out,
Yeah,
like
that was
movies
cool.
like
I
that,
love that
Project
era.
X, and that was like a huge comedy era. These like hilarious movies that was booming. Now comedy's not booming as much. It kind of went through action and thriller and drama. Now drama is the worst genre you could make. Comedy is coming back in TV series. So now you're seeing this like dramedy, which is like popular. These 30-minute, highly done premium content comedies is starting to be a thing. Hacks is a fantastic show that, in that comedy drama scene. But if you go and make a drama movie, you're probably not making your money back. So the industry goes through these waves. And so that also helps us understand, okay, what do we need right now?
The shitty thing about the shitty thing about putting a project to the side is you also hear those success stories of like, oh, we wrote this script and we didn't think anything would happen, and then we made $1 billion off it.
Yeah.
So it's like, but what if this is the one that's
what
gonna be
if
the
that
hit?
what if in the back of your head?
You look at
chirping.
the
I'd lose
guys,
sleep from that for
the
sure.
guys who did Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I
Didn't
forget
the
exactly.
pilot for that like was really bad,
Horrible.
or like
Horrible. Like they got like axed off it because it was
Yeah.
so bad. And they got funding to do their pilot, and it was absolutely horrible. And they'd almost like kiboshed the whole thing.
Right.
And then, these guys are a bit of, I don't know personally, but, from what I've read, they're a bit of a goofball kind of scenario with them. And next thing you know, they're getting a $250 million first look deal with Netflix to just sit there and hopefully come up with the next Game of Thrones. So it's like they optioned the IP of Game of Thrones, pushed it, royally screwed up the pilot, got
screwed
lucky.
up the last season too, by the way.
Yeah, I don't even think they were involved in that either. But
Yeah, you wanted to buy a 500 euro mug.
yeah,
Yeah. In
Yeah.
Europe, this guy's like, this mug is so sweet. He's like, how much? He's like, 150 euro. Like,
No,
put that mug
looking
away.
at
I was like,
mug down. Yeah,
But it's a verified mug. Get the
verified
fuck
mug.
out.
Yeah, it's got its own account.
Yeah.
it was pretty sick. not
They're
gonna lie.
selling it in Dubrovnik.
Imagine drinking beer out of that thing.
You don't even
Sick.
drink beer,
Yeah,
man.
I would drink in that one though.
Too funny. But yeah, so I mean, there's those success stories, and the problem is the industry is changing rapidly, and it's in probably its darkest spot in the last 20 years. Like Hollywood is seeing changes that we haven't seen before. People are being fired. They're cutting shows. They're cutting costs. Warner Bros. Is a disaster right now.
People are starting to hate
Showtime's
Hollywood.
canceled. Like
Wow.
there's massive changes happening because of the gluttony spending that's been the last 20 years.
I was gonna say, my ex-girlfriend was an actress. That way was an actress, and like she'd go on set. Not even it was a Hallmark movie, random role. She'd make like $5,000 for a
yeah.
week.
Oh,
She-
easy.
And
That's
she was
small
on
time,
stage
too.
for maybe 2 hours. The rest of it was in the trailer, getting fed and whatever.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Oh, it's insane.
the-
It's
the
union,
amount of-
right? That's the like
Yeah.
you have to.
The
get
amount that the
that's a-
studios spend on constructing sets too is ridiculous.
Oh.
Like they'll make a set for a day and they'll throw out half the stuff they don't need.
Who
I,
needs 40 types of cookies?
I heard a rumor that like some of the sets that are built, they'll have like a budget, let's say like 20 million
Yeah.
for all the set build, and they'll make sure they hit that budget. Even if they're under, they'll make sure they'll hit it, because if they don't, then it seems like they made a bad movie if they don't spend a lot of money.
Oh yeah, no, it's insane. And I mean, that's what you've seen for the last, 10, 20 years, is just these outrageous spends. And at the time of like DVD sales, like it made sense. Like you could make a return on certain things. You could run calculations based on the value of an actor and see, okay, if I sell the territories globally, this actor brings this much value, we could justify making this spend. So you'd see movies that would, you'd make them for $5 million and they'd do $100 million, right? In the
That's
box
insane.
office and on DVD, like they just crush. You look at Paranormal Activity, the first one was made for $37,000. Did
Yeah.
190 million.
They
Is what it
made
made, Jason Blum.
10 of them. How many
Yeah,
did
and
they
the
make?
first one made him
Yeah.
190 million.
Jeez.
It's crazy.
So you'll never see that
Yeah.
ever again in the film industry, because people aren't going to the theaters unless it's like Batman or Top Gun. And so you've lost that for
Nostalgic
indie films.
almost.
Yeah, nostalgic stuff still hits, but it's big blockbusters that only really do well in theaters. So you've lost that for an indie movie or a lower concept movie. DVD sales have completely been kiboshed worldwide, where before COVID, you had DVD sales still in a lot of third world countries.
Oh, really?
So you could sell off your territories and do a $5 million movie and be able to sell off your territories, make your money back, and then, turn a profit selling your North American rights. Where that's gone because streaming services have taken over in those countries. Streaming services don't want to pay nearly as much as what Hollywood used to be
It's
paying.
very similar to what's happening in the music industry, right?
Yeah, it's very
Because
similar.
album sales before, everyone was making a lot of money. Now it's streaming services because people don't want to pay that much money, right? The clients, consumers.
Yeah, I don't want to pay
Yeah.
$15 7 times a month to listen to
Yeah, exactly.
different albums.
To different
Exactly.
albums.
$7
Same
listen
thing with
to
movies.
everything.
A DVD, how much was a DVD back then?
I don't remember.
20
wanna say,
bucks?
like,
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
bucks for a
Some of
movie?
them were way more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like it's a $10 subscription for Netflix. You get 3 of them, like Disney, whatever.
Thousands of things
Yeah,
that you
thousands
can
of
Or you can
movies.
rent it for like $4 off of YouTube, like a brand
Yeah.
new movie. You can rent it for $4, have it for like 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
do
so like
that.
you're just not making nearly as much, but like Netflix is in like deep trouble. They spent, I think their spend last year was close to $6 billion. And I think they only actually, or I think they get $6 billion and they spent $9 million or something. Like they're overspending annually
Wow.
Well,
by
they're-
a significant amount of money.
They're overspending because they're trying to make a bunch of shows that to
Exactly.
hopefully bring in an audience that will counterbalance.
They're
that.
trying to compete with people like Apple and Amazon, who Amazon could sell enough books to make every movie they could
Because
ever
it's
ask
tech
for.
money spending,
It's
but you're
exactly.
not in a tech world. Like you're in
art.
art, and that's the problem. The
Yeah.
business side, and kind of what you're talking about, the business side and the logistical side are getting,
Yeah, they don't make sense.
they don't make sense. Yeah.
They don't make sense, and so you're starting to see that shift all of a sudden happen now, where it's like, oh, okay, Netflix is going, oh crap, we've overspent. We need to be a bit more specific here. We're gonna start cutting costs. And Netflix is always trying to just like own the content, have the content, because over time it's gonna pay itself back. So that's why they've been able to just overspend. But I think the biggest issue, if they were able to cut back on, are these first look deals with people that don't actually generate anything for them. So like someone has a little bit of hype, and there's that fear of, oh, they're going to be snatched up by one of the other bigger players. So we need to just go in and offer a ton of money, lock them into like a 3-year deal, so that anything that person creates for the next 3 years is ours. And we're going to pay them $5 million a year, $10 million a year. We're seeing deals $50 million a year. Kevin Hart,
Yeah.
$50
Kevin
million
Hart.
a year to Kevin Hart.
This was happening a lot in the past couple of years, but I think it's died down a lot with Netflix, especially and I
Mhm.
think they've been canceling a lot of shows. Netflix. Like there's been a
Tons.
lot of shows that like get a first season, canceled. Second
Canceled.
season. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can see the
Go.
quality of shows on Netflix is going down.
It's terrible.
drastically.
And I think you have to look at the streamers, and you can really rate like the ones that care about their content
Yeah.
and the way it's actually developed and shot and have a tonality feel to it that feels premium. You look at most Apple TV projects, they have that just higher level precision. They're a bit more creative in their shot design. Amazon, same thing. You can tell that there's a bit more budget behind their projects. Netflix is like, we want as much quantity.
Yeah.
Well, we'll throw a bunch of garbage on here too, but hopefully people will also still
Again,
find the good
it's
stuff.
tech thinking versus artistic.
Yeah.
thing.
I think
It's
the
money. It's money versus like greed,
Well,
rather
no,
than like being
Yeah,
artistic.
but even all tech
and
companies, right? Like the extrapolation percentage is on, it's like 10x, 20x, 30x, whatever. But that's not art.
that's like with
that's
Tesla
true. The
too.
art,
Yeah,
you need passion for it, right? And
Exactly.
if you just thinking about the dollar sign, the product will usually not be that good.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's also where you're seeing these directors and actors now be fairly
Picky.
difficult and pushing back on what the streamers are trying to do. So now you're seeing these huge buyouts, because maybe Netflix is developing some garbage creative, but they know they need to attach a bunch of big actors to it to have it be
To make it
decent.
float.
So now the actors are being like, well, you're not going to pay me back end, which you would traditionally see in box office deals and whatnot, where the actor would be paid a certain amount of money and then they get points in the back end. So based on how good that movie did, they would get paid extra. you're seeing a little bit of that in streaming services, but it's way more rare unless you're like a big time actor that can negotiate some back end deals. It's also tough because like Netflix can tell you whatever they want because they own all the analytics, where it's like the box office and the Nielsen ratings and stuff. Like that stuff was all public. Like you could really see how well things were doing, and then an actor could see what they're gonna kind of get in residuals on it. Where now Netflix has all that analytics, and I haven't done any like specific deal with Netflix or been able to kind of get inside and see if they actually do share. But from the knowledge I have is, they're not sharing all the information, so you don't actually know how well your project did.
It makes you wonder, like, are the glory days of Hollywood over? And then, because not all of, but a lot of the content that I
You see
consume,
all the big all Hollywood stars becoming realtors now.
you see Leo, like,
yeah.
Becoming
Brad's
YouTubers.
West Vancouver Homes with
honestly.
Brad Pitt.
like most of my content's consumed through like podcasts, YouTube people that are like between 10 to 15-minute videos that I subscribe to, and then TikTok.
Yeah, no,
Takes up a lot of it.
exactly. And that's exactly where the world's at right now. Short form content has far surpassed long format, and that's why they're all panicking.
And also like independent artists too, like sorry, not artists, but independent creators, like for example Logan Paul, right? How he can make a huge brand out of himself and everyone follows him
It's
as
like
a person, not because of the movies, but because just as a person they like
Like I
him.
also see like a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's like it says like 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh, they're
I'm like,
great, man. They're great
They're
though.
good.
Don't bash
So are
Quentin
you, man.
Tarantino.
I'm saying like there's no way I can sit down for 3 hours and 20 minutes and sit down
You
here.
also hated Deadpool, bro. It was great.
You're a bad
Deadpool
example.
3 on the way.
I'm a bad
Ryan
example.
Reynolds, Lee,
And Hugh
with
Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
That's gonna be good.
Yeah, it's gonna be nuts.
I've
but
never
no,
gone to a movie with this guy where he didn't fall asleep. Like,
It's tough,
As a matter
though,
of
it's
fact,
tough.
get out of here.
It's extremely tough, and that's where the industry's at. It's been so saturated to the point where now people are disinterested, and that's why I think the panic's starting to happen, because they thought that this would never come, and
Yeah.
and they're seeing short form content rise and rise and rise, and the viewerships are so strong, and people are becoming these massive stars out of nothing just from dancing on their phone. And that's literally the whole motivation behind the series that we're doing, is everyone in Hollywood's trying to figure out how do we take that audience that's on short form content and get them to long format. And that's the biggest question right now. And so with the series we're developing, we're hoping that our series will help bridge that gap. But it is that big question, is like, will the attention spans be there? My rebuttal to it, when I can look at the industry from that negative standpoint and be like, I think we're doomed. But then again, I was just at TIFF. And so, seeing TIFF and seeing all these incredible movies from some of the biggest stars in the world come to Toronto and shut down a street for a week, and see the buzz around movies still, and see the amount of people that went to the seats, still gives me hope for long format content and good movies, because there will still be those people that want to sit down and have an experience and kind of get away from what they're dealing with in their life, or find something they can watch that can resonate and feel like they have someone there. And so I think that the world's going to start to shift back to long format content eventually. I think right now we're very focused in short format, and it's doing very well. But again, like you'll sit down and listen to a podcast, it's like an hour long. So it's like, I
Easily.
think
3-hour
series,
podcast, yeah.
3-hour podcast easily. So I think
You're
it's
not just sitting on the couch and listening to it. You're doing something.
yeah, you're doing something. And I
Yeah.
think that that's where it's like, we need to be so smart in the content we create to be able to provide and give the audience something to learn and take from the episodes. And I think that's why series are going to be the ones that do the best in the next little bit.
Mhm.
One, because you can keep to like 45 minutes. So,
So
clip
clip
someone
a
can sit
movie
down.
almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Okay,
think with a
interesting.
series, you're actually able to develop the characters more, because you're not limited to 2.5 hours like a movie, right? Which, ranges between that like 90-minute thing to, you see some movies that are in that 3-hour range or whatnot. But I think with a series, you can, one, build out your characters over season after season. That's why you're seeing these huge fan bases around like Euphoria, Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, right? The viewership's there, the fan bases are there, but how do you find that franchise? And how do you get the audience over there when it's becoming harder and harder? That's the biggest question. And, if any of you guys find that answer, please let me know. because we're actively trying to figure it out.
That's $1 million question, probably.
I think
Yeah, it is.
I think the series remark is a good point. Like I love watching a 45-minute to 50-minute episode that's even a little bit drawn out, because you can develop the character so much better. And there'll be like
Yeah.
6 episodes, and then you wait another year for the next season. Like Breaking Bad was awesome because you could go through so much that you could never fit that
the
into
level
a
of
movie.
detail is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's those series, right? That Breaking Bad is iconic.
Like for me, I like Better Call Saul more, just because if you actually think about how logistically challenging it must have been to make a movie after that,
Yeah.
but
Make it good too.
make it good and relay everything back to another movie that was what 9? How long was it?
6.
5 seasons.
5 seasons. Yeah, Like the director wise is just insane.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no,
those
it's-
guys are.
it's incredible, and there
Yeah.
there is that level of like storytelling and creative that's still out there, right?
Yeah.
That's gonna drive people to sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Better Call Saul is fantastic, and you look at some of these other ones that have prequels. Yellowstone has been a hit on Amazon Prime.
The Game of Thrones prequel.
Game of Thrones prequel
Yeah.
is coming, and those are like they're just trying to milk that one a little more, right? People are unhappy with how it ended, so let's just create the beginning of it. But I think the guys that created Yellowstone did a really good job with now rolling out their prequel 1883, and have really captivated a new audience with that Western feel that we saw in some of the early movies, and now they've kind of modernized it, but also then rooted it back in the prequel era, which is 1883, and then I think Yellowstone takes place like early 2000s, I want to say, and I think they were actually doing a sequel to it now.
Well,
But
go ahead.
I just want to circle back to Crawford Productions. I feel like we've gone through
we went through the rat race
Yeah.
of Hollywood
So-
right now.
So you started from a one-man show, and you have north of 80 people working for you now, right? Like,
Yeah, so it varies. So we started as one-man band. Internally at Crawford, we have myself plus 7. So
Right.
that consists of Bailey, who's our head of production. We've got Bryce, who's our operations manager. Kayla's our senior accountant. We've got Astrid, who's our bookkeeper. Roy, who's a junior accountant. And then we have Oswaldo, who's our post-production supervisor. We've got Raphael. And I don't think I'm missing anyone. I think that's... And
the
then me.
CEO.
You better not be
yourself?
missing
Yeah,
anyone.
and then myself. And then myself.
Wow.
But so that's our in-house team. So those people are, like full-time employees. Not all of them are full-time, but a lot of them are pretty close to it.
So even your bookkeeper, accountant are full time.
Yeah, and they're all internal. Yeah, and so and
Wow.
a lot of people
I'll
look
tell you
at
what,
me and
80
go,
people. That's a lot
That's
to bookkeep.
That's sick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and-
80 people, like, we have to pay them.
Well, yeah, you
payroll,
gotta
like, well, yeah.
Budget for thousands of
out hours.
cookies and
the
trailers.
cookies, the trailers, the
Someone's
fancy
gotta-
drinks,
yeah.
the special almond requests that we get. No, but yeah, so internally that's the team, and it's expensive. Like, someone asked me, it was like, oh, it must be nice like having that all internally, and I'm like, yeah, it's fantastic, because one thing that we have that most production companies don't in Vancouver is we can be fast.
Yeah.
So we can turn out budgets fast. We can put projects together fast because we can do it all internally, or do most of the legwork
Would
internally.
you say that's a competitive advantage that you have over
Yeah.
a lot of the other similar sized companies?
Yeah, I would say that most companies that I say are kind of batting in the same sort of field that we're in right now. And again, we don't want to stay here too long. And that's part of the reason for, having a larger team, is trying to elevate ourselves past where we're at. But most of the companies like we compete with have a smaller internal team. A lot of the accounting's outsourced, or bookkeeping's outsourced. They don't necessarily have post in-house. So that's where we're able to be fairly efficient with projects, which is, a selling factor for us. But then when we do our bigger projects, we hire on about, it ranges between 50 to 150, 200 people. A project coming up, we have 80 people onboarded that are external to the company that come on for that project. So the one coming up is a 3-day shoot. So that most people will start prep the week before, and then they'll do the shoot, which is 3 days, and then they'll have a couple days of wrap.
How well
after.
aware of you what's happening in every category?
I would say that I like to know what's going on and have updates pretty much in every department, at least as we're getting things going on the day. There's going to be things happening in other departments that just don't even make it up and get solved, which is great. And that's why you have these leaders in each department. But a lot of times, like, Bailey's able to mitigate it too. So like, he's our head of production, and I'll be working on trying to land another project, and he'll be dealing with this commercial that we're doing, and I don't even hear about the
That must be a great feeling.
pre-conversations. It's fantastic. Yeah, and luckily we have a team like Oswaldo, our post supervisor and main editor. We've got like a retainer with like Snapchat. Believe it or not, we edit all their like news. So if you're ever on
really?
like people, there's like one called Petty Crimes, which is like a online Snapchat thing that's on the news feed that people can tune into, that a partnering company of ours down in the States, called Sickbird. They do all the Snapchat contracts, and then we do all the post production on it. And so Oz runs our post team to the point where I don't even know what's happening. And it's the best thing ever, because the second I know something's happening, it's probably not happening smoothly. And so, having and surrounding yourself with people like Bailey, Oswaldo, Kayla, our entire team, they know when it needs to get pushed up for clarification or when we need to step in, but they're really good at just being efficient and, prioritizing what they need to, managing their schedules, and staying on time.
Oh,
Wow, good for you. I mean,
that's
I
amazing.
remember when I first had my assistant, then I brought him on. For the first like month, I would have like 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Just because the thought of, okay, like I'd wake up, I'm like, okay, well, how is this? Like I gotta find enough work to pay him, pay her. They have other expenses and costs, and they're just waiting there for you to deliver.
Yeah.
Does that bear on you?
Yeah, I would say that the taking initiative is one of the hardest things, to find people that can take initiative.
Yeah.
Because usually if someone takes initiative, they don't want to work for someone.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So that's like,
Very
when
true.
you can find people that take initiative but are also willing to like work for you, those are really valuable people.
You
And I
gotta
think that the
keep 'em
other
happy.
thing, yeah, keeping them happy, but also, I think why we've been able to retain such a great group and continue to, we have people that send in resumes all the time. Weekly, we're getting resumes. And I think it's because we've been able to kind of build this culture where you're kind of in at the ground floor, and everyone's passionate about their section. And so when they're passionate about what they're doing, they'll take initiative.
Yeah.
Oz, I don't know if he sleeps. Like, I sometimes have to be like, Oz, go home.
I don't know. If
At the end of the night, I'm like, Oz, you need to go home, because you're like, you were here before I was, and it's 9 o'clock and I'm leaving. You should leave. And he stays. And then I get like a
How old is he?
notification. He's, I want to say 21. He's from Mexico City, one of the hardest working dudes I've ever met, and a huge asset to our team. But yeah, he's so passionate about post production and organization on the post side of things that he just stays working on himself, and I think that's what's really cool, is being able to create a workspace where even if they're off the clock on working on internal Crawford projects, they're working on themselves, and then they do it at the office. And it really builds that inspiration within each other that I think is really special. And I think that's why people kind of gravitate to this space, is they know that it's an open and collaborative setting where people can grow themselves.
It's it sounds like you've built a great team, and obviously like you're a great guy, so people see a great person, they imagine that you're a great boss, and they want to work for you.
And support
course.
that dream that you've
Yeah,
elaborated for them.
Yeah, when I think it, like you guys see it, right? In your line of field, it takes an army, right?
Yeah.
And I think that when people realize that, and realize that you're in the best interest of having them succeed too, right? Like, I think,
Right.
if you're going to be the boss, you're, good at everything and a master of none, where these guys are all masters of their crafts. And that's what's really cool. And
Yeah.
that's why they're so passionate about what they do, right?
Mhm.
I think like enthusiasm and passion is very contagious too, right? Probably see your enthusiasm and they feed off of it, and that really helps, and that's why they're working past 9 p.m. probably
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, no, it's cool, but I mean, like I said, like, I don't know how it's been for you guys with your businesses, but there's ebbs and flows, right? And
Every day.
yeah, every day, right?
Multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes like I said, we were coming off this like boom last year where it was like, I was like, where are these projects coming from? Like, they're not stopping. This is fantastic. And I always remember thinking in my mind, what happens when these things stop? And try not to think about it, because when you think about it, then now you're attracting it. Next thing you know, it happens.
Does
And
this
then,
all the time.
yeah, hopefully it hasn't stopped for you, but it kind of stopped for us. You
Well,
know?
even the start of this year was kind of slow too.
That's when I start bringing him on, and I'm leaving dentistry for you. It's like,
I didn't
fuck.
say that.
You put the pressure
I
on.
didn't say that.
But yeah, there's pressure, and I think somebody, because you said you've been doing this for about 2.5 years now or something.
Yeah, we've been like a what I call like a real company. Like it's been me for a long time, but
Right.
it's been a real company for like 2.5 years.
But
where-
yeah.
So and the problem is that your stats are so limited that you start exaggerating everything. So for example, last year, okay, was amazing, and now like, well, half to 2x, half x double. But then you're like, okay, well, now we're in a fucking recession. You have to think of the realities that you're faced with, and you can only go off one past year. But if other companies that have been doing this for 10, 20 years, they're like, they know, okay, well, slow this year, maybe slow next year, but the following year it'll pick up again. And you just
Yeah.
don't know that when you're fresh.
No, exactly.
'Cause
I
you've never
think
been through a full business
The
cycle.
blip.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like there's, some of our other companies that we like consider competitors and whatnot. Yeah, been around for a decade or 20 years plus. And we're like, how the hell did they manage, because we come off really strong year and think we're on this high, and then we're like, it's never going to stop. And the next thing, it comes to like a screeching halt, and we're like, where did it all go? Like we just built everything that you would think would be the most attractive,
Mm-hmm.
business model to these clients. Why has it stopped? And it was largely due to COVID actually going away is what like caused a lot of our projects to go away, because Canada was actually a bit more lax at
They packed
start.
up. And fucked up
They
in
packed up
Canada.
and left. They're like, we can
south.
finally leave
Where are you
Canada.
guys going?
Yeah. I'm like, we were just getting a good thing going here.
I have cookies.
Yeah. More cookies for your trailer. But no, it was like, I think once Canada was like pretty strict after company or other countries kind of relaxed their COVID, where at the beginning, Canada was still fairly lax compared to other countries. So people were shooting more in Canada. And then it was like, oh, Canada can't figure it out. So we're going to the States. And then it was like, great, all our US people that were shooting in Canada are now just shooting in the States. So we lost a lot of that. And then it was like, okay, we're just like bleeding cash, because you still have payroll. You still have these people that are,
Because you built up
working.
your team based on the year that was awesome.
Yeah, because we were like building, because we were like, oh my God, we need more support. And it was like funny. We like onboarded Roy and Astrid because our accounting side was just like slammed. So we're like, okay, we need to do more. So we hired Roy, and then we hired Astrid, and then it was like, oh damn, there's nothing for them to work on. And like they just finished their
Send
trial
them my way
period.
if you ever have extra time. Send them my way.
Literally, man, you
This
need
guy,
that
this
merch
guy
crunch.
pays one
They could
account.
roll.
This guy pays his one accountant to the value of 6.
That's true.
Yeah, so I mean,
Just
just slaps it down
Yeah.
for him. Yeah, so I mean that was like tough, because it was like, did we just jump too far ahead of what we had? Because at the time we are like, we need this support, it'll make things way easier. And then it was like, okay, we get the support, and now we've got nothing to actually like put them into, because all of a sudden it just like dropped off. So then it was like, okay, what can we now allocate their time to, which is really difficult. Well, allowed us to grow some of our processes internally, which was great. And then it was like getting to a point where it was like, okay, like we're gonna have to really start pushing here, because we're bleeding cash and we don't have enough work. And it's, even still, luckily we've had things have really picked up in the last quarter here, which is great. But it was, pretty stressful. Still is. Right?
So what did you do to push? Like, for example, if we want sales, I can call maybe people that I've worked with in the past. It's about it. Oh, I can cold call a bunch of new
Or you just shout in the house
People.
and say something.
sure.
Yeah.
And then
Because are you
for
painting exteriors or interiors?
no, I
Mainly
do
interior.
we do exteriors as well, but we don't like sell for it. If it comes our way, then we'll do it. But we do mostly drywall and painting renovations or new builds.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
No more steel stuff.
no more. A little bit of steel stud.
Yeah,
You're
no.
begging me to do
God.
steel stud somewhere else. What do you
Thank
I
mean?
said one
God.
closet.
You're begging. I was like, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know
this
if I
guy
can do it.
did. This
He's
guy
like,
started. This
please.
guy started steel stud he's like, yo, I can do steel set. I'm like, okay, let's try it out. We have a closet.
First of all, let's remember
It was
this is
not
going
closet,
online.
It was
okay?
supposed to be. It was supposed to be a
Fucking guy.
library, like a space for a
It's
library.
your project. It's your project.
I
You
once-
signed off on it.
Yeah, let's
No,
not
I
talk
signed
about it.
off on it. Not on the
Edit this part out.
Let's just say the client wanted to fit 30 books in the shelf. They can only do 10.
No, they can do 10 on the bottom shelf, like 4 on the top shelf.
Yeah.
It's the pains of
looks
growing,
good.
right?
Yeah.
You add a new service, you have to figure it out.
Yeah, no,
You,
totally.
you hire people that you think are going to be good, and then over the project, you're like, okay, shit, these guys need to leave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you
'Cause-
bring on different people.
So for you guys, it's you always subcontract, right? So it's like you can just like get rid of them easy. That
I
kinda
have
thing.
a couple of guys that are full time
Yeah.
that'll just like that put out fires if I need them to,
Yeah.
or they'll do a job from start to finish, and they're awesome.
Yeah,
But most of it is like weaning out through the subs.
yeah. So if they suck, you could be like,
Well, it's not even just sucking. I think just the new realm of it is like, okay, well, maybe I pay 10, 20% more for sub trading rather than
Yeah.
having them in house. But yeah, I don't have to worry about the bullshit that comes with it. If they suck, on to the next.
yeah, you're not worried
Less
about
headache.
That's headache, right?
Yeah,
If I want to,
cleaning.
I don't want to. I'm just saying, if I want to just close down shop for 3 months, I don't have to answer to
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
more
it
more
makes,
freedom.
makes full sense. I mean that was our model for a long time. Yeah, and you just got to a point where it's like, hey, this makes more sense for us to start doing it all internally or adding to the internal team. But yeah, I would say, for us from a sales standpoint, it's really really difficult industry, because we could go do sales work in the commercial land, which is where you could traditionally see that. We could go reach out to agencies and be like, hey, we want to bid on projects, but it's an extremely competitive industry here in Vancouver for commercial production companies. There's a lot that are really good that are in bed with the agencies that we would now have to go and try and somehow break through.
Probably super long sales process.
Oh,
if you're short
God,
on
man,
cash for a
like-
month, you're not gonna see that money forever.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like commercials, like you can do fairly rapidly and fast and make a lot of money at it. That's why there's some commercial companies in Vancouver that have done extremely well, and they make big cash, but it's tough because they've been around for a while. They've got the relationships with these agencies. They just know how it works, and they're passionate about commercials. We don't love doing commercials. It's like it's great, it pays the bills, but it's like it's not that fun. You're not telling a story. You're not part of something bigger. It's get the bag, get out. So that's where for us it's like, okay, cool, we could allocate time and go try and pick up the phones to agencies and companies and get them to give us a commercial project, or we could spend some time understanding the film industry, trying to navigate where it's going, where it's changing. Because for us, we look at ourselves next to a company like Warner Bros. Or Paramount that has, say, a couple thousand employees worldwide. We have 7. For them to change course, it's a huge adjustment. For a company like us to adapt and change course is very easy. So we're trying to understand the industry to the level that they can understand it, and then predict it a bit faster and efficiently than what they can do. For them, once they get a movie going that's costing them $200 million, they can't jump. Like they can't run away from it unless you're Warner, and they just did on that Batgirl or something or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Superwoman or whatever it's called. And Batgirl, I think it was. That they just bailed off of, $90 million movie. Huge loss for them. Obviously there's a lot going on there, but for us, it's like we can spend a few $1,000 in development, be like, okay, the industry's, looking for more series, YA themes, not looking for a ton of drama. It's like, okay, cool, let's shift course. Let's start looking for this stuff. We can do it very efficiently and develop a lot cheaper. For them to develop, they have to follow like the union standards. So if they're going to pay like a writer this WGC scale, it's going to cost them huge bucks. It's like $37,000 to like get a story editor or something crazy. For us, we have a lot of passionate people that maybe aren't WGC that have stories, so we could pay them a little bit cheaper to help develop stuff. So for us, we're like, we could focus on picking up the phones and trying to attract bigger clients, like big commercials and whatnot, but we're competing in a very saturated market. It's not exactly what we love to do. Or we could do what we love to do that maybe is a bit more of a longer game to get the funds in and the resources but it's moving the company in the right direction. And so that's where it's really challenging to find the balance, though, because you do eventually have to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Speaking of sales, you guys have a lot of like some big clients. Like you work with Apple and stuff. What was the breakthrough? What was the first big one that you were like, oh, we made it?
So I mean, we've worked with like Apple TV, we've worked with Warner Bros, Paramount. We're kind of like our biggest clients that we've managed to work with.
Superstars.
Yeah, a couple of superstars. We worked with Jason Momoa. We worked with Amelia Jones, who was in Coda.
John Cena?
Just won Best Picture. John Cena. Yeah, I worked with him. Worked with Denis Villeneuve, who's John Cena. You can't see me. Crazy guy.
Could
by
you
the
see
way.
him?
I could see him. Yeah, I almost like. So I was the one that like greeted him when he showed up to set, and I almost hit him with the. But then I was like, he could just like squish me.
You got so nervous
So
too.
I was like,
probably, yeah.
okay, I'm not going to. But
massive.
he's an incredible human. That guy donates. I think he's the leading Make-A-Wish donor or something. I think he does the
Wow.
most out of anyone. One of the coolest guys I've met. Absolute most professional guy I've seen in acting. This guy is he's there to do business, get in there and get out. And he said something that kind of really resonated with us, just being new to the industry or emerging in the industry, where they were asking him like a question. One of the producers at Warner was asking him like something about John Cena as a character or something, and his role in the Suicide Squad. And he says, I'm not answering that. You can exploit me for John Cena, but you can't get to the real me. And I was like, wow, like this guy that's so real. Like he's been exploited through every possible channel for being John Cena, but he will never like give them his true like soul, which they try and get out of him, in certain questions. So it was really just kind of took me back, being like, wow, this guy, it's got to be tough, like what he does, because everyone's trying to exploit you in any way possible. Obviously, he's been massively successful, and I'm sure wouldn't change it for the world, but it can also be hard at times. But so we worked with, him. He was fantastic. Worked with Jason Momoa. That guy's crazy. Awesome dude, but super intense, and you have to just match his intensity, which is a lot of fun. And then I mean, Amelia Jones is just an up and coming absolute star. She was in Lock and Key and in Coda, and that took home Best Picture, and she's just fantastic. And then Denis Villeneuve is like the biggest inspiration that we've worked with. Who's the director of Dune, director of Prisoner, Prisoners. He directed Sicario.
This sounds like an Oscar
Incendies.
speech right now.
Yeah, literally. I mean,
I like to think.
These are
I'd
big
like to
names.
thank-
These are
yeah.
big names. Yeah. that's what I'm
No,
saying.
I wish. One day that'll be the
Yeah.
goal. But yeah, so
Well, so
Denis
maybe someone
Villeneuve-
watches this and picks this up, right?
Yeah, unless they
All
pick up
80
our
viewers.
show. Yeah, someone pick up our show, Bad Influence, which is coming soon. No, but yeah, so Denis Villeneuve is incredibly inspiring because he's one of the best visionaries out there in this time, and he's Canadian. So it's pretty cool to see someone from Montreal be able to transcend to the biggest level of Hollywood. And then James Gunn, who's just crazy. He's awesome.
Oh, James Gunn.
Yeah, so we worked with James Gunn with John Cena for the
He-
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, for Suicide. He also did that Marvel.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the
So they're doing
Galaxy.
the new
Yeah,
one right
yeah.
now. But yeah, he's a super cool guy. So all those people we managed to get to work with. But back to your question on how, Bryce McGregor, who works at our company's our operation manager, had reached out to me on Instagram. So he wasn't working for us at the time. This was about a year and a half ago, 2 years now. And he reached out and said, hey man, like I got this message from my like distant cousin because my grandma connected me with him, and he's got this project with Apple TV. And I go, I didn't even see it because it was like I didn't follow him on socials. We hadn't really talked before.
Oh, he used that as to get on
He like
board.
DM me that on Instagram.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember we're driving to this other shoot on Vancouver Island, and I forget why we were sitting there. And next thing I know, I was like going through my message requests, and excuse me, and I see this message, and I'm like, Apple TV. So I click on it. I'm like, Bryce McGregor. Click on it, and I read this to Bailey, and we're sitting there, and Bailey's like, no freaking way that this guy has any connection. He's fake. He's a phony. There's no chance. Don't reply. and we're sitting there, and we're like, what if like he does, And we're kind of like, all right, we'll reply. And he's like from Heritage, local dude. So I'm like, okay, he's like, gotta be a good guy. So we like reply, and he's like, yeah, instantly hits me back. Like they want to hop on a call, like now. And I'm like, what do you mean call? Like we're on our way to like
Yeah.
Vancouver Island. And he's like, no, like they need to move ASAP on this project.
Why did he
They're
pick
sending
you
over an
guys?
NDA.
Why did he like? Did he?
Well, so Bryce picked us because he had seen some of the work we were
Oh,
doing,
okay.
and Bryce,
Our social media.
yeah, Bryce was doing like some film work himself, but wasn't like a company yet. Like it was more just him doing a lot of like videography work. But he had aspirations to get into like the bigger stuff, and was like, hey, like I could bring this to them, maybe help them out on it.
Right.
So yeah, you know, it was a huge bone that he threw us, which led to kind of the growth that we've had now, which is we're super grateful for. And now he's been a huge part of our brand and building that, and you know, that's kind of where he's moving more into.
Crazy how one little.
Imagine
Yeah.
if he didn't respond to that DM.
Oh, dude, I think about it all the time. I'm like, man, I
Yeah.
should have replied sooner. But so anyway, so like that happened, and next thing I know, he like shoots over an NDA, and the NDA is like an Apple TV NDA.
you're
And
like, "This
I
is
go
legit."
through it, and I'm like, they're about to own us. Anyways, so yeah, so we were able to do a project with them, or do a few projects with them.
Wow.
So, yeah, and then that all started just because we replied. And I remember on that way over to that shoot, we hopped on the call and we started losing service on our way, and we were like, "Oh my god, we cannot lose service. It's the biggest client."
You went
of our
from
lives.
not believing it to I hope I don't lose service.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like pull over, you know, let's take this call, and then that kind of spiraled into getting the opportunity to work with Paramount and Warner. And then we also have worked with a bunch of great companies out of the States who have kind of been like a facilitator for us. So Framework is one of the companies out of LA where they are kind of in tight with all the studios. They'll handle a lot of the creative work, and then they'll need someone in Canada to execute it. And so then they'll pair us with Paramount, and they'll do the creative. We'll execute it in Canada. And then there's a couple other companies in the States too. So yeah, and it just kind of like snowballed.
Jeez, that's
from there.
crazy.
It's like
Yeah.
it's funny because before you bought a drone, did you even have a passion for movies?
No, not really. Like
Because right now you're talking and you're so into it. And it's
yeah,
only
like
been
I could talk
5
about it
years.
forever. Like we've
It's
probably just blown through the time.
It's only been
but-
like 6-7 minutes, 6-7 out years
yeah.
since you got a
How
hand of a drone, but you're talking
Yeah.
as if it's been like something since like childbirth.
Yeah, no, and
So lucky to find it too. 'Cause so many
70?
people don't find it.
yeah, it's been I've been super lucky to kind of find something you're so passionate about. And it's hilarious because I think about high school and I think about not being interested in film at all, but kind of being interested. Like I had a couple friends who were like in photography, and I was like, oh, that's like cool, but like hockey, you know? And then actually in grade 11, I was in English with Tiana Vinter,
Uh-huh.
and one of the English courses things we had to do was film a horror film. And I remember having so much fun filming that, and it just looking like absolute garbage. Never touched the camera before. And then as soon as that project was done, it was like back to the main
Fuck.
event, you know.
Yeah.
And now I think back and I'm like, oh wow, maybe I should have like picked it up
Picked up
earlier.
on that. Yeah.
So
yeah.
so 20-year-old Jacob, do you think he could ever imagine where we'd be right now?
I don't think, you know, previously my younger self would have ever imagined like where we'd be at now, but I think he always, like that younger self always believed that we'd do something we enjoed,
Mhm.
you know. And I think that was part of the reason why I didn't feel like I had to go to school.
You didn't
Felt
know
like I
what it
knew.
was, but you get there eventually.
Yeah, I felt like I was so driven to doing something I enjoy, whether that's working for someone, worked a ton of different jobs, you know, and enjoyed them. Worked at the golf course, loved every second of it. So I think that I always believed in myself, in that wherever I'd end up, I'd be doing something I enjoy. And then it just happened to be through this passion of, you know, picking up the camera.
As we wrap up, what's like the best advice? I know you said that you received. What would your advice be to, say, some 19-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid in grade 12?
Look in your DMs because you never know what
Yeah.
messing on. You know, I think I've talked to a few people before who have kind of asked similar questions and been like, you know, what is it that you'd give advice to like your younger self? And I think it would be to kind of roll with the punches and don't stay away from any opportunity that comes, because I think oftentimes people will look at something and be like, don't know if this is really worth it for me. And a lot
Or
of
if I'm
times,
cut out for it, or
yeah, a lot of times I've looked at opportunities like that. Oh, I don't know if this is where I want to go or where I want to be, but then it spirals into something you get. So I just be super open to rolling with what comes, but then also being very driven and understanding where you want to go, but knowing that your vision will change. And you know, I've talked to people about vision statements and mission statements and developing that as a business, and it's okay to have your company's vision change. It will. You know, your mission,
You change.
yeah, you
Yeah.
change, and your mission usually stays fairly true and is more of that through line, but your vision will adapt and grow and transition into these bigger grand ideas. And you know, it may not be super clear when you start, but just know that, like, if you're always moving in the steps and the direction you're trying to go,
Yeah.
it's
you'll
gonna
get there.
happen.
Yeah.
you
A
know?
quote that I love and I stay true to every day is just fake it till you make it. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? I mean, you had no, correct me if I'm wrong, you had no education in terms of videography, producing,
Yeah.
or cinematography, nothing.
Well,
Right? And you
I'm
just
big
just did.
believer in
Yeah.
fake it till you make it, because if you believe that you are that, you'll become that, and that's exactly what happened.
Manifesting thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened when I was getting into the music scene. I was like, I have a drone, don't have a clue how to use a camera, but I want to film DJs. So I told all the DJs at the local clubs in Vancouver, because my cousin worked at Blueprint, and I would get into all the clubs for free and all the night shows for free. And I'd go to every single DJ and be like, oh, I'm a videographer. Like, I shoot DJs. Haven't shot a single DJ. Don't even own a camera. Just own a drone. But I knew I wanted to do it. And I was like, I just need one of them to be like, oh, yeah, man, like, come out and shoot my
You just
show.
need one.
I just needed one.
You just need
I
one.
just
Yeah.
One
imagine
guy
that's
did.
hilarious.
And
yeah.
one guy was like, oh, yeah, dude, like, next weekend, come down. Juliana Raskin, guy from Coquitlam, who's killing it now. And I'm super proud of him. But he gave me like a shot and was like, oh, yeah, dude, come out and film. And I had to go borrow a camera from a homie. And I was like, dude, I'm going to shoot this nightclub. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And he set the settings. He's like, don't change it. He's like, just point.
Was it Kyle?
No, this was a what was his name? I think it was like Jeffrey or something. So I'd met him through a music video where I did drone on it, and he had the camera that would perform the best in the low light in a club. So I hit him up and I said, hey, can I rent your camera? I paid the rental for the camera, got paid nothing for the shoot. So I'd also tell people, like, invest in yourself.
But
How did it
That's
turn
the,
out?
the
How did
best
video,
investment.
Was the video good? Did it turn out good?
I mean, like I wouldn't show it now, but at the time I was like, damn, this is
Yeah.
so cool.
How do I
Look at
turn this thing off?
yeah. Now I'm like archive, Control Alt Delete that
Yeah.
thing. But
I mean,
yeah.
the fact that you didn't go to school. Let's say you knew that you didn't want to go to school, but if you force yourself to go to school, even though you didn't want to, let's say you'd spend like 10 grand. Instead, you spent $100 and you taught yourself how to shoot in a nightclub.
exactly, and I think that's the other thing too, man. Like, there's so much out there these days from learning, and it's not to discredit going to university and whatnot, because there's some absolutely incredible
Programs.
professors and schools out there that can provide you everything you need to have an incredible career. But I think in our line of work, especially, you know, a lot of the film schools kind of rob you, and I've heard that from multiple people,
For sure.
that they learned a bunch of stuff in film school that they never really used once they got out. And it's very expensive at film
That's
school.
very true with any major.
Yeah, and I think that, like, just go and do it. Just go and, especially if you're in Vancouver. Like, if a kid in Vancouver is watching this, wants to get into the film industry, just go do it, man. You can get a PA job like that, and you will learn more by being a sponge on set than you will in any film school.
I agree with that. Well, man, this was a great podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks
How
for
long
coming on.
has it been?
Jesus.
Our longest podcast.
Longest
I
one,
think.
yeah,
Going
yeah.
long. Sorry, guys, I could talk.
No,
forever.
no,
I could talk
no,
forever.
no.
I could talk forever.
The
Yeah.
download on AirDrop is gonna take hours.
Okay, so I guess Jacob will edit this podcast in the meantime, and
yeah, trim her down.
okay, yeah. So thanks for coming on. Appreciate
Really
it.
honestly,
'cause-
I want to also say, like, there's a lot of people in the world that, you know, that have done great things, but we really think big and highly. I think
Yeah.
for what you've created and what you've done for
It's
yourself.
hard to get
passion, too.
impressed these
Yeah,
days, but
very hard.
Well, because everyone's a fucking real estate agent or a
Yeah,
fucking construction. You know what I mean? Like no one has like
Yeah.
like
construction.
which path, like, you know, everyone wants to do, I guess, very similar things, but that's a pretty hard industry to break through.
Yeah, and I think that's the
Yeah.
reason. It's just it's so saturated and it's so difficult to break through. The fact that you just kept your head down and just went for it is very admirable. I think you should give yourself a lot of kudos.
Hey. No, I know. I appreciate it. You know, you guys see it all too, just in your lines of work too. You just got to keep the blinders on.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
the blinders on. You know, you can do great things.
Drown out the
No.
noise and
Drown out the noise. Stay
Yeah.
focused and believe in yourself. And you know, the world's your oyster. So.
love it.
Oh, is there anything else you want to add?
this
Paige?
camera,
Sorry.
that camera.
No, I would just say that, you know, if anyone's, you know, looking to get into the film industry, feel free to reach out to us because, you know, we're always looking for support and
We will
great.
now check your DMs.
Yeah, no, I go through our website channels, please.
What's the
It-
website?
The website's just crawfordfilmworks.com. You can see a bit about the stuff we have to offer. We've got studio space too that we're providing for the community here in Vancouver. We've got
Okay,
a bunch of equipment.
That would have been, yeah. So your studio's in Port Moody near the breweries, right?
Yeah. So our studio's in Port Moody. We offer it to the film industry. We like to support indie
for you.
filmmakers, photographers. So, you know, more than happy to support different projects.
Can we shoot our podcast there?
Or you could totally shoot your podcast there. We got lots of lighting. But yeah, so like, you know, if anyone wants to learn more about the industry or wants an opportunity to break in, you know, we're definitely always keeping our doors open for new and up and coming talent. And yeah, check us out
And
on all platforms.
who
At
do you-
Crawford Filmworks.
Who would you like to see on this podcast?
That's a great question, actually.
Jason Momoa. Can we set it up?
Momoa would be fun on this podcast for sure.
We need a bigger chair.
Yeah, he might come in with a samurai sword too. But who would I like to see on this podcast? You know, I think there's other entrepreneurs out there that I think would be really interesting to hear from more on like the product side.
Products, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a
so
good point.
people that have done really well with products.
Give him a shout out.
There you go. I'm trying to think of someone off the top of my head, but
We have nowhere to go.
Yeah. I would say, like, you know, you look at what the people like Lululemon have done, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's super cool to just understand how to build like that image, that vision and brand, and something that I'm always trying to figure out. Okay, how do we have a reputable brand? How do we
Yeah.
have a name brand that people remember, even though it's not a product? So
Yeah.
it's cool to hear from other people that maybe have done products and created, you know, really strong brands around just a simple product. I find fascinating.
Maybe if we can bring like an exec from Aritzia.
Aritzia
Yeah,
or
Aritzia
Lululemon.
is super
Good
cool.
one.
Yeah.
Like what Aritzia has done with that company is incredible. I also think, yeah, just like hearing from I was at TIFF recently, and which is Toronto International Film Festival, and they had Viola Davis there. And not saying, you know, get Viola Davis because it might be a little tough, but people that have accomplished so much in their lives, her, you know, as an actress, but so many other elements of her life, you know, is really inspiring to hear from. So I would even like challenge you guys to like find some like older subjects that, you know, maybe have been super successful in a variety of aspects of their life, because it's always like there's so much to take away from someone who's, you know, Viola Davis. I don't know exactly how old she is. She's got to be in her 50s, I think. And hearing her experience in the film industry and in life was just like the most motivating thing I've heard in a long time. So finding, you know, business people like that, there's so many in Vancouver that kind
Crazy
of are
serial
behind
entrepreneurs, yeah.
yeah, that are behind the curtains that have
And we're so lucky to live in a city that just has so many self-made successful people
yeah,
that it's
and it's like
crazy.
undercredited. I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
when people think of Vancouver, it's not what they think, right?
Yeah.
They think mountains and skiing and hiking, yeah. But there's a lot of really like talented, successful people here, especially the music side, really building up.
Yeah.
And construction.
You know who you should get actually? Do you know Buck? Buck, what's his last name? He runs Chaos Club. It's a company that just did a deal with Warner Digital, I think. It's like a record label. They like have Boslin signed to them.
We actually had Boslin here at our party once.
Sick. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like Buck is like, you know, a huge inspiration of mine too. He's a peer. What he's done with Chaos Club's been like incredible. He's really intelligent business wise, has built a beautiful vision and brand with that company. and understands the music side and
Maybe I
business
can
side.
get him to sign my band.
There you go. There you go. So
Maybe
he's,
not play your songs.
he's someone who'd be great. Even like Alvaro from Blueprint, could be a really cool person who's like from the music side, built like an absolute monster of a, events company, and then saw it all come crashing down in COVID, and now it's rebuilt.
Yeah.
It's like pretty crazy.
What's the company called?
Blueprint?
Event
Blueprint
Oh,
Events.
okay.
So they do like
Nice.
Faded, Contact.
Mhm.
They do the stuff in the States, partner with Live Nation. They own all the nightclubs in Vancouver, like a ton of them. And so what Alvaro's been able to do, he built this insane company that was super successful. COVID happened, pretty much like lost it all down to like 3 people, I think. It was like him and 2 others sold their bunch of their properties, had to sell their like office, had to just like liquidate.
Everyone loves a
farm.
good comeback
Stretch it
story.
down.
Yeah, and then now like things are looking up for them, which is great. But he had to be real crafty for tough times.
Definitely.
But it's
That'd
super
be a good
cool
one to
dude,
have,
man. Like
yeah.
he's a great dude. Older guy, but he's gonna kill me if he sees that. But he's not older, but he's
Mature.
cool. Yeah, mature. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks again, man.
Appreciate
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.